So I was the firstborn male to my parents. The matriarchal side of my family was Clipsham, and they married into the patriarchal side of my family, which was the Duffs. And the Duffs are only 3 generations removed from Scotland themselves, although the great patriarch of the family, also called David, because it was a family tradition to call your firstborn male David, he had died before I was born. So whilst I remember my grandma on the paternal side, I don't remember my grandfather on the paternal side because he had already died. My grandma was in fact his, at least his second wife. I don't know if he had any more, but she was certainly second, because my father doesn't have any siblings, but he did have several step-siblings. So if you like to think of David Duff as being the patriarch of the family, he had children, one of which was called David Duff, and then he got married again and had my father. Now, none of the other Duffs, so to speak, had children, got married and had children. I think one of them did get married, but there was no children. So the basis of it was that when my father had children, he called me David, despite the fact that he was not the firstborn male to my paternal grandfather. He was the firstborn male to my paternal grandfather in terms of that particular wife, but we were a step line already. We were not the first set of children for him. So my father is not called David, he's called John, but he still carried on the Duff tradition of calling his firstborn David, which is probably good because my step-uncle David died several years ago now, with no children. This of course does mean that I am left carrying the family line, because my parents also had 2 other children, both of which however are female. So when they get married they change their names and their children don't carry the Duff name, and if they don't get married and they die, the name dies with them. So I am the only person who in theory can carry on our family name, which is unfortunate because I'm not likely to have any children. So there we are. This could be the sort of end of the natural extinction of a family, I suppose. So my nuclear family then was me and my 2 sisters and my parents, and we were all born two years apart. So I was 82, one was 84, one was 86. I'm being deliberately vague because my family are also not particularly open like me in terms of this, so they won't necessarily want their, details being splashed around. And we lived in a house in Lincoln, because of course that's where my father worked after they left university and got married. Wasn't their first house in Lincoln, it was their second house in Lincoln where I was born. Don't remember anything of it at all. It wasn't far from where I grew up though, and there are pictures mainly of me playing with a cat. And I don't know what became of those cats either. They either died on the nearby main road or whatever. By the time my second sister had come along, so the 3 of us were all there, we had moved to Swallowbeck, which was to be our sort of family home, if you like, a lovely detached house with gardens all round it, and quite a long garden as well, back garden, leased from the council at that point in time. Fabulous. It was for like a field. It was fabulous. A brilliant place to bring up 3 children. My grandparents on my maternal side moved from wherever they lived before to Skellingthorpe, and I don't remember much about that either, except that there were pine trees in the garden or near the garden, and their kitchen was on the front side of the house, and you could look out and see these pine trees. And they didn't live there very long before moving to very, very close to where we lived. sort of the next estate along, if you like. And then finally, my paternal grandmother moved up from Bristol as well. So my two sisters, my parents, and all my living grandparents on both sides were in the same city of Lincoln. And that's really what happened within those first 6 years, I suppose, of my life. I have as I said, no memory at all. And in fact, the conventional psychological thinking is that you remember absolutely everything that ever happens to you, but you can only recall something if you have a method of classification within the brain, and a neuro route, I suppose, a route for electricity to pass along neurons. And when you're very, very young, the thing that you don't have is a system of retrieval. You don't have a way of classifying these early memories. And because of that, they can only come out at certain times, if that makes sense. So I suppose if I've been talking about it a very long time, occasionally I just suddenly remember something. But generally speaking, I have no memories of that period at all. I was quite late, I think, in sort of being able to, recall memories at all. I'm told that I was a very sort of peaceful baby that didn't cry very much, and I generally tended to sort of be stuffed with my sisters to try and keep them quiet when they were growing up, that sort of thing, in their cots. But really, who knows? So that, I suppose, is probably about all I've got to say on that thing. My parents were, wed. We were all brought up Christian. There was no child outside of wedlock. There was no broken home. Do you know what I mean? My parents were both employed, both working, and that's sort of the way that I've been brought up, I suppose. I'm not saying that people that are brought up differently are, worse off or whatever, but I feel that I had a good childhood. I feel that my childhood was loving and sort of nuclear in the very traditional sort of sense of the word, I suppose. Hard-working, morally upright, loving household, I suppose. And I still think that we are that today. But that was especially true, I think, for when I was growing up. So I hope that you'll get a lot out of this sort of series as I go on, and maybe understand me a little bit better. If you don't sort of like it, then fair enough. Or if you don't understand anything, then fair enough either. But I feel that it's quite important, I suppose, to get this online, so that I can always refer back, because people tend to say, oh, blah 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 blah, and I think, well, I know when I did that, but I have no videos or anything to show from it, because it was before the time that I was able to sort of do anything like that. So that's the reason for this set of videos, and the introduction to each will be reasonably long, and the music is not. I've chosen those deliberately because those pieces of music will be concurrent to that sort of stage of my life, if you like, important to me, what I would generally listen to, what reminds me of that period of my life or event or portion or whatever. So yes. And there isn't much else to say in this blog at all, except for, of course, the birthdays. But before the birthdays, just time to let you know that Joey Dial has a fight coming up this week, according to this. So best wishes to him. And now for the birthdays, we have Johnny Saville, Sean Osteen, Richard Snedden and Sammy Berwick. So happy birthday to all of them.